My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 29. And on the day I married the man I love, the entire family row at my ceremony sat completely painfully empty. No dad walking me down the aisle, no mom wiping her eyes, no sister waving at me from the front. Just white chairs and a silence that felt louder than any organ music. Hours before I put on my dress, my dad called me from an airport gate. His voice sounded rushed, almost irritated. "We'll celebrate later, kiddo." You know how it is. This trip was already booked. In the background, I could hear boarding announcements and my sister's laughter coming through his phone. The last text I received from her before I walked down the aisle was a photo of crystal blue water and her legs stretched out on a beach chair. Vacation. Can't wait. Enjoy the wedding, sis. While my husband's side filled their rows, cheering and clapping, my side looked like a scene where everyone had already left. I stood there in my dress, staring at those empty seats, pretending my chest wasn't burning. That was the moment something inside me quietly broke. I didn't scream. I didn't cause a scene. I simply watched, I remembered. And I started keeping receipts, both literal and emotional. 2 months later, the same people who chose the Maldives over me called with a very different tone in their voices, asking me to fly out for her big day at a luxury resort. They expected I'd show up, smile politely, and play the forgotten daughter again. They had no idea how much I had changed. Before I tell you what my dad said that night, and what happened after I picked up the microphone at my sister's wedding, tell me something first. What time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story about family boundaries and consequences can travel. I'm an ER nurse in Houston, used to chaos. Sirens, alarms, people shouting orders over one another. My training taught me to stay calm when everyone else is falling apart. But nothing in my job prepared me for the quiet kind of pain you feel when your own family votes with their feet and chooses a vacation over your wedding. Growing up, I always knew my dad had a favorite. He runs a successful construction company, Mitchell & Sons Custom Homes, big houses, major clients, and an even bigger ego. At church and in the community, he's the family man, the guy who gives speeches about hard work and putting family first. At home, though, family first usually meant Chloe first. My younger sister, 3 years younger, the golden child with big eyes and an even bigger Instagram following. I was the responsible one. Honor roll, scholarships, night shifts at the hospital. She was the fun one. The one Dad flew to Cabo for on her 21st birthday while telling me, "You're tough. You don't need all that." When I got engaged, I thought maybe this time things would be different. Dad took me to lunch at a steakhouse, pulled out a leather checkbook, and wrote a generous check for wedding expenses as if it were routine. "You've earned this, Laura," he said. "And don't worry, we're blocking off that whole weekend. Nothing is more important than walking you down that aisle." I believed him, or at least I wanted to. For months, I sent my parents and Chloe photos of venues, dresses, and mood boards. My fiancé, Ethan, a firefighter, politely asked in the family group chat about suit colors and rehearsal dinner times. Half the time, no one even responded. 3 weeks before the wedding, Chloe posted a countdown on her Instagram story. Maldives bachelorette content trip in 3 weeks. I stared at my phone. The dates lined up perfectly with my wedding weekend. When I asked my mom about it, she brushed it off. "Oh, honey, it's just a few days. We'll make it work somehow. Don't be dramatic." Later, my dad texted, "We've already paid deposits. I'll fly back in time. Relax." I tried to relax. I told myself they wouldn't actually go through with it. The night before the wedding, Ethan and I were in our small apartment going over last-minute details. He was ironing his shirt while I scrolled through Pinterest, trying not to cry. A notification appeared on his phone on the coffee table. It was a preview of a message from the Mitchell family group chat. "Do you want me to open that?" he asked. "I never look in there," I said bitterly. "Be my guest." He unlocked his phone, and I watched his expression change in real time. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger. "Lauren, you should see this," he said quietly. On the screen was a stream of photos, my dad sitting in a first-class seat with champagne in hand, my mom wearing a floppy hat, Chloe posing with her passport and a caption, "When your fam chooses tropical vibes over stress. Maldives, here we come. Family first." The timestamp on the boarding photo was 2 hours before my rehearsal dinner. No call, no apology, just vacation posts. My heart sank so hard I felt physically sick. Maybe it's just a layover, I whispered, searching for any explanation. But then a video started playing, Chloe squealing with excitement. Next stop, Maldives. Sorry, Lauren, we'll FaceTime you from the beach. Then my dad's voice in the background joking, we'll be there in spirit. Ethan looked at me, his jaw tight. If my family did this to you, he said slowly, what would you tell me to do? I didn't answer because we both already knew. I'd tell him to walk away from them. Tell me honestly, if you saw your fiancé's family literally flying across an ocean instead of driving 20 minutes to your wedding, would you still walk down that aisle hoping they might show up? Or would you already be planning your exit strategy? I still got dressed. ER nurses learn how to function on autopilot. You can be breaking inside and still tape an IV, still call a code, still keep your hands steady. On my wedding morning, I did my own makeup with that same mechanical focus. Mascara, concealer, lipstick, ignore the shaking hands, ignore the empty text thread from mom, ignore the unread message from dad that simply said, signal might be spotty, we'll catch up after. Ethan's mom knocked on the door of the bridal suite. Sweetheart, it's time, she said, her eyes shining with emotion. I forced a smile, picked up my bouquet, and walked toward the sanctuary doors. The music started. The doors opened, and the first thing I saw was the divide. On the left, Ethan's side, packed rows. His brothers, cousins, childhood friends. They stood up, clapping and smiling at him, then at me. On the right, my side, 2 coworkers from the hospital, my college roommate, and 3 empty rows reserved with white cards that read, Bride's Family. All those chairs lined up perfectly, staring back at me like silent witnesses. My knees nearly gave out. Ethan noticed it too. His eyes darkened with something between anger and heartbreak. When we reached the altar, he squeezed my hands so tightly my knuckles ached. You look incredible, he whispered. You and me, that's enough. I nodded, because if I spoke, I would cry. The officiant began the ceremony. Just as he reached the line, who gives this woman to be married? A loud burst of laughter suddenly echoed through the sound system. At first, I thought it was microphone feedback. Then I heard it clearly, waves in the background, glasses clinking, and my sister's high-pitched voice. You guys, look at this water. It's literally unreal. The entire room turned toward the back where the sound booth was located. The DJ and the church tech were scrambling with cables, staring down at a phone on speaker. On the screen, projected for the entire room to see, was my dad. Sunglasses on, drink in hand, standing on a deck above turquoise water. Happy wedding day, kiddo, he shouted into the phone, completely unaware that his face was now 20 feet tall on the projector. We're tuning in from the Maldives. We'll celebrate later when things aren't so busy here. Show her. The camera turned toward the beach. Show the beach, Chloe. The view shifted to my sister standing in a bikini and a white cover-up, posing with a mimosa in her hand. Vacation can't wait, sis. We'll repost your photos, she said with a laugh, flipping her hair. Someone in the crowd coughed. Another guest muttered, You've got to be kidding me. Whispers spread quickly across the room. That's her family. They're calling from vacation. Ethan's mom, sitting in the front row, covered her mouth in shock. The technician finally disconnected the phone from the system, cutting the audio, but the moment had already happened. The officiant cleared his throat, clearly unsettled. Shall we continue? He asked carefully. I looked at Ethan. His jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. We can stop, he whispered. We don't have to go through with this today. No, I replied, surprising both of us. We promised each other. Let's finish this. For us. From that point on, I felt detached, almost like I was watching everything from outside my own body as we said our vows. I promised to love and support him. He promised to stand beside me no matter what. The room faded at the edges, except for those 3 empty rows burned into my memory and the lingering image of my dad's sunglasses. When the officiant finally said, You may kiss the bride, the applause felt thin and uncertain. As we walked back down the aisle, Ethan leaned closer and murmured, I promise you, Lauren, they will never do this to you again. While the guests moved toward the courtyard for photos, I stepped into a quiet hallway, pulled out my phone, and opened the family group chat. The Maldives videos were still there. So were screenshots of Chloe's Instagram story. One post showed a boomerang of my dad raising his glass with the caption, "When your fam's idea of support is sending good vibes from across the ocean." A family first, I saved every image, every video, every caption. I didn't yet know what I would do with them, but I knew one thing. One day, there would be accountability. If your family embarrassed you on a giant screen during your wedding, would you confront them immediately? Or would you wait, collect evidence, and respond when the time was right? The reception that followed was beautiful for everyone else. Fairy lights hung across the room, the food was excellent, and Ethan's friends danced with the kind of energy only firefighters seem to have. His cousins gave heartfelt toasts about how he had always looked out for them. Every time someone mentioned family, I felt a small jolt in my chest. When it came time for the parents' speeches, Ethan's dad stood up and cleared his throat. "I never had a daughter," he said, "but today it feels like we gained one." The room responded warmly. I smiled, even though my eyes stung. The microphone on my side remained silent. Between songs, Ethan and I stepped outside for a moment of fresh air. We stood beneath strings of lights, faint laughter drifting from the reception hall behind us. "You okay?" he asked. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My dad literally photobombed my wedding from another continent," I said. "What do you think?" Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "You should probably see this too," he said. He opened Chloe's public Instagram page, a photo posted less than an hour after we said I do. My family in swimwear stood around a candlelit table on the beach. My dad was in the center, raising a champagne glass. The caption read, "To my favorite girl finally getting her dream trip. Maldives with the best family on earth. Fash family first, wouldn't miss it for the world." The timestamp overlapped almost exactly with the moment Ethan and I exchanged rings. I stared at the screen until the image blurred. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I repeated quietly. Memories surfaced, every time as a child when Dad missed something important. My school plays, my nursing school graduation, the day I moved into my first apartment, always the same line. "We'll celebrate later, Lore. You know I'm busy." "I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt," I said finally. "They made their choice." Ethan nodded. "Then we make ours. We build our own family. You, me, and anyone who respects us." At that moment, something inside me settled. The anger cooled into something clearer. Boundaries, consequences. "I don't want to scream at them," I said. "I want them to understand what it feels like to be on the outside for once." The next day, my phone filled with messages. From my mom. "Sweetheart, the Wi-Fi was terrible. We're so sorry we couldn't be there." The live call was our way of trying. From my dad, "You're making a big deal out of nothing. We told you about this trip. Don't ruin your marriage over one weekend." From Chloe, "Sis, it was just timing. You know I love you. Please don't be mad. We watched the replay. You look gorgeous." I left every message on read. For the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me. Weeks passed. My work kept me busy, and Ethan and I slowly settled into married life. Shared grocery lists, laundry routines, late-night streaming shows, his turnout gear hanging over the shower rod to dry. Occasionally, I'd see one of my dad's advertisements on local television. Mitchell and Sons, building homes, building families. I would roll my eyes and mute the screen. Then one Tuesday night, about 6 weeks after the wedding, Ethan walked into the living room with his laptop open and the same concerned look on his face. "Lauren, you should see this," he said again, a phrase that had become oddly common in our marriage. On the screen was an internal company email someone had forwarded anonymously. It was addressed to the staff of Mitchell and Sons. At the bottom it read, "Forwarded anonymously." The email itself was from my dad to his accountant, dated 3 days before my wedding. Maldives retreat charge. Please classify this under client development staff retreat. We'll write it off this quarter. And yes, pull from the discretionary budget we set aside instead of Lauren's wedding contribution. I'll make it up to her later. My stomach tightened. The check he wrote at the steakhouse, the one where he said "You've earned this," had been redirected to pay for their island trip. This wasn't just emotional neglect anymore. It was intentional. "So he took back your wedding money to pay for the vacation he chose over your wedding," Ethan said slowly, "and then called you dramatic for being upset." I nodded, jaw tight. "He turned my wedding into a tax write-off." That night, I opened a folder on my laptop and started saving everything. Screenshots of messages, videos from the ceremony, Chloe's posts, the email Ethan had shown me. I named the folder Family First, Evidence. For the first time, it didn't feel like petty record keeping. It felt like documentation. People always say forgive and forget. But when someone turns your most important day into a line item on an expense report, is forgetting wisdom? Or just permission for them to do it again? Nearly 2 months after the wedding, on a quiet Sunday morning, my phone buzzed with a video call from my mom. Normally, I would have declined automatically, but curiosity made me answer. Her face filled the screen, full makeup, soft lighting, the familiar smile she used whenever she tried to smooth things over for my dad. "Hi, honey," she said brightly. "Do you have a minute? Your dad and Chloe are here too." My chest tightened. "What's going on?" I asked. The camera pulled back. My dad waved from their living room couch wearing a polo with his company logo. Chloe sat cross-legged on the rug in a white romper, a ring sparkling on her finger. "Surprise!" she announced excitedly, holding up her hand. "I'm engaged." I stared at the screen. "Already?" I asked. She had been casually dating someone named Dylan when she went on that Maldives trip. I didn't realize it was that serious. "He proposed on the same beach where we watched your ceremony replay," she said happily, as if that detail were romantic rather than uncomfortable. It felt like everything came full circle. "We also have more news," my dad added. "We're planning the wedding in the Maldives. Same resort, same overwater villas, a real destination celebration." "And of course," Chloe said quickly, "it wouldn't be complete without you and Ethan there." My mom's smile softened slightly. "We really want to make things right, sweetheart," she said. "This will be our chance to all be together." I almost laughed. The same resort? The same place where they toasted my sister while I stood crying in a church hallway. Who's paying? I asked directly. They all paused. After we hung up, the official invitation arrived. It was a professionally edited montage, drone shots over turquoise water, slow-motion clips of Chloe and Dylan laughing in hammocks, and voiceover lines about second chances and family bonds that distance supposedly cannot break. The final frame appeared. Chloe and Dylan, Maldives. Save the date. Below it read, featuring special guest of honor, maid of honor, and big sister, Lauren. I almost threw my phone across the room. Later that evening, Ethan came home from his shift and found me sitting on the couch. The video was paused mid-frame, Chloe's face frozen in a perfect influencer smile. "So," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door, "I'm guessing you got the invite." I nodded. "They want me to bless her marriage in the same place where they celebrated skipping mine, using the same money Dad took from my wedding to pay for that first vacation." Ethan sat beside me. "We don't have to go," he said calmly. I stared at the screen for a long moment. "No," I said slowly. "We do." He frowned slightly. "We do. I've let them write my story for 29 years, I continued. The overlooked child, the understanding one, the nurse who always understands when they're busy. At my wedding, they showed everyone exactly who they are, and I stayed quiet. If I don't address it, they'll continue acting like nothing happened. Anyone who pushes back will just be labeled ungrateful. They'll talk about family while using people as props." I opened my laptop, clicked into the Family First evidence folder, and began organizing it into subfolders. Wedding, Maldives trip, money, public image. Ethan watched quietly. "What are you doing?" he finally asked. "They want projector screens and speeches," I replied, "so I'm going to give them exactly that." I booked 2 economy tickets using our own money. I reserved a basic room at the resort instead of one of the overwater villas they had booked for immediate family. I also bought a vivid red dress, something bold enough to feel like a warning sign. Then I emailed the resort's event coordinator. I introduced myself as the bride's sister and maid of honor and asked if I could upload a special surprise tribute video onto their AV system the day before the wedding. She replied within a few hours. "Of course. We love surprises. Just bring it on a USB." I saved the file under the name FamilyFirstTributeFinal.mp4 and smiled for the first time in weeks. If your family invited you to the same place where they embarrassed you, gave you a microphone, and offered full access to the projector, would you stay quiet or finally press play? The Maldives looks exactly as beautiful as it does on Instagram. It also feels very different when you arrive for closure instead of a honeymoon. As our seaplane skimmed across water that looked almost unreal, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Last chance to back out," he said. "We could tell them you're sick and spend the week on the beach ignoring everyone." "I've been sick for months," I answered calmly. "This is me getting better." At the resort dock, my family waited like a welcoming committee. My dad wore a linen shirt, my mom a floral maxi dress, and Chloe stood in a white two-piece outfit that made her look ready for a bridal magazine shoot. Dylan stood beside her, tall, well-dressed, polite, and clearly still believing the perfect family story he had been told. "Lauren," my mom said brightly, hugging me as if the past few weeks had been normal. I returned the hug politely. "You look great," my dad said, giving me a quick side hug and patting my shoulder like I was a client who had just signed a contract. Up close, I noticed more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes, but the same practiced charm remained. "We're really glad you came, kiddo. It means a lot." "Does it?" I asked. My voice sounded friendly, but the question hung in the air. His smile flickered briefly before settling again. Chloe bounced slightly with excitement. "Lore, that dress is amazing," she said. "You're going to look great on camera. I already told the videographer, you're our emotional anchor, the big sister, old wounds healing, and all that." "Old wounds," I repeated. "Right." The resort staff handed us cool towels and coconut water while we checked in. Our room was modest by resort standards, still nicer than most places I had stayed before, but nothing like the overwater villas visible outside the window. My parents and Chloe were staying in those, of course. That evening, they were already posting room tour videos online. Before dinner, I met with the event coordinator in the reception pavilion, a glass-walled hall overlooking the ocean, where the ceremony and reception would take place. "Here's the USB," I said, handing it over. "It's a mix of childhood clips, photos, and a few messages from people back home." Only one of those descriptions was technically accurate. "Perfect," she said, connecting the drive to the laptop linked to the projector. "We'll start it when your speech begins. Just signal the DJ when you're ready." She pressed play to check the file. The opening frames appeared, childhood photos of Chloe and me wearing matching pajamas, clips my mom had shared over the years, all set to soft background music. I had included those deliberately, to create a sense of nostalgia before the tone changed. "Looks great," the coordinator said, stopping the video before it reached the more revealing sections. The wedding day itself passed in a blur of heat and quiet tension. Chloe's ceremony took place on a deck overlooking the water and looked like a Pinterest board brought to life. White flowers, flowing fabric, guests dressed in pastel colors, and designer sunglasses. My dad walked her down the aisle, smiling proudly while drones hovered overhead capturing every angle. Ethan's hand rested in mine, steady and grounding. During the vows, I listened as Chloe promised Dylan she would always show up for him. I tried not to react to the irony. After they kissed and guests tossed flower petals, everyone moved into the pavilion for the reception. The tables glittered with glassware and candles. A massive screen behind the couple displayed a slideshow of Chloe and Dylan's engagement photos. Many of them were taken during that first Maldives trip, the same one that overlapped with my wedding. Every slide was a reminder of where they had been that day. At our table, a few guests started polite conversations. "So, Lauren, what do you do back home?" one of Dylan's relatives asked. "I'm an ER nurse," I replied. "I help people recover when the ones who were supposed to take care of them don't." The cousin laughed politely, not fully understanding the meaning behind the comment. A moment later, my mom approached and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Sweetheart, you'll speak after dinner, right before your father's toast," she said quietly. "Keep it light, okay? Today is a happy day." I gave a small smile. "I'll speak from the heart," I said. Dinner ended, and the DJ stepped forward with the microphone. "And now," he announced, "a special speech from our maid of honor, the bride's big sister, Lauren." Applause followed. Chloe looked up at me from her seat, smiling with emotional anticipation, clearly expecting a touching and forgiving speech she could later share with her followers. I stood, smoothed the red dress, and walked to the center of the dance floor. Behind me, the projector screen shifted from the generic slideshow. The slideshow switched to a black screen, waiting for my signal. I looked out at the crowd, my parents' friends, my dad's business partners, Dylan's relatives, and resort staff standing nearby with trays in their hands. I picked up the microphone. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "For those who don't know me, I'm Lauren, the older sister. I'm also the one person in this room who has seen Chloe and my parents when the cameras aren't rolling." A few light chuckles moved through the crowd. Chloe laughed nervously. "First, Chloe, you look beautiful," I continued. "And Dylan, you seem like a genuinely good person. That's why I think it would be unfair not to share the full context of how we arrived here today." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. My dad's smile slowly tightened into something closer to discomfort. I nodded subtly toward the DJ. The screen behind me came to life. Childhood photos appeared. Little Chloe covered in birthday cake, me pushing her on a swing. "We grew up in a home where the phrase family first was practically a motto," I said as the images played. "At least, that's what we told everyone." The montage changed. Now the screen showed a still image from my wedding. Rows of guests in the foreground, and behind them 3 empty rows marked bride's family. Gasps spread quietly across the room. "2 months ago," I continued, "I married my best friend in Houston. You won't see many photos of my family from that day, because they weren't there." The next video played automatically. It was the recording from my church ceremony, the moment my dad and Chloe appeared on the projector, him in sunglasses and her in a bikini, calling from the Maldives. Their voices echoed through the pavilion speakers. "Happy wedding day, kiddo. We'll celebrate later." "Vacation can't wait, sis?" In the recording, they were laughing. No one in the room was laughing now. I turned slightly so I could see my parents. My mom covered her mouth. Chloe sat completely still, eyes wide, mascara already beginning to smudge. My dad had gone pale beneath his tan. While my husband and I exchanged vows in front of 3 empty rows, I said, "My family was here at this very resort, turning our absence into social media content." The next slide appeared. Chloe's post filled the screen. #family first. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Several of my dad's business partners leaned forward to read it more closely. One whispered something to another while shaking his head. Then the final document appeared. The email. I had removed the accountant's name but left my dad's intact. The projector zoomed in as I read aloud. "Please classify this under client development/staff retreat. We'll write it off this quarter. And yes, pull from the discretionary budget we set aside instead of Lauren's wedding contribution. I'll make it up to her later." The room went silent. "So Dylan," I said, turning toward my new brother-in-law, "when you hear the phrase family first, this is what it has meant in practice. Turning my wedding into a tax write-off. Celebrating a beach vacation while telling me I was dramatic for being hurt." My dad stood up abruptly. "Lauren, that's enough," he said sharply. "Turn that off." I raised a hand calmly. "You've had your image for decades, Dad. Your ads, your speeches, your family man brand. Tonight, we're simply adding the rest of the story." The slideshow shifted again. A split screen appeared. On one side was one of my dad's local television advertisements, him wearing a construction helmet saying, "At Mitchell & Sons, family isn't just a word. It's our foundation." On the other side was a zoomed screenshot from the email. Maldives retreat. Client development. Charged to family wedding budget. Guests began murmuring to each other. One of my dad's largest clients, a well-known local developer, stared at the screen with a tight expression. "You're trying to destroy me," my dad said, voice tense, "over a scheduling conflict." I gave a short laugh. "This isn't about scheduling. It's about a pattern of choosing what looks good over what actually matters. It's about telling me my pain meant nothing while you literally cashed out my wedding." Chloe finally spoke up. "Lauren, this is my wedding," she said, her voice shaking. "You're embarrassing me." I looked at her carefully. She seemed frightened and humiliated, but still confused about why any of this mattered. "I'm not doing anything, Chloe," I replied calmly. "I'm just pressing play." For a moment, the room held its breath. Then Dylan slowly stood from the head table. He looked at the screen, then at Chloe, then at my parents, and finally back at me. "Is this true?" he asked quietly. "Did you really skip her wedding to come here and pay for it with her money?" My dad started to speak. "It's more complicated than—" "It's not," I said. "The documentation is right there." Chloe grabbed Dylan's arm. Baby, it was just timing, okay? We talked about it, remember? They had everything handled back home and I needed content. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing how it sounded aloud. Dylan gently pulled his arm away. You told me your sister understood, he said slowly, that she was fine with it. His eyes moved toward me. I spent my wedding day pretending I was fine, I replied, because I didn't want to be called ungrateful. But no, I wasn't fine. The developer who had been watching earlier spoke from his table. Robert, is that your company card referenced in that email? He asked. My dad's jaw tightened. This is a personal matter, he said. We should discuss it privately. You made it public when you used company funds and advertised family values in your marketing, the man replied. We'll talk when we get back to Houston. He stood, signaled to his wife, and left the room. 2 other men I recognized from my dad's commercials quietly followed. For the first time in my life, my dad's confident posture faded. His shoulders dropped. Lauren, please, my mom said through tears. We can fix this. Turn it off. We'll talk later. Part of me, the part conditioned since childhood, wanted to agree, smooth things over, and reassure her. But then I remembered the empty chairs, my sister's voice interrupting my vows, and that line in the email, I'll make it up to her later. I raised the microphone again. For years, I said calmly, I told myself that blood automatically meant loyalty, that I should be grateful for whatever attention I received. That setting boundaries was disrespectful. But working night shifts in the ER has taught me something different about family. Real family is the group of people who show up, the ones who sit all night in plastic waiting room chairs just to be there when someone wakes up. Family isn't who looks good in photographs. It's who stands next to you when there's nothing to post online. I turned toward Chloe. I don't hate you, I said. I just won't keep pretending this dynamic is normal. One day, if you have a daughter, I hope you remember what it felt like to see those empty chairs and make a different choice. Then I looked at my parents. You chose a vacation over me. You chose a tax write-off over my wedding. You chose appearances over honesty. Tonight, I chose myself. I handed the microphone back to the DJ. You can stop the video now. He did. The screen went dark. Ethan was already standing near the door when I stepped off the dance floor. We didn't rush out. We simply walked away, 2 people leaving behind a situation we hadn't created, but had finally stopped pretending didn't exist. Outside in the hallway, Ethan held my face gently in his hands. I'm proud of you, he said. I exhaled slowly, my hands still shaking. It feels like I just pulled up my own roots, I admitted. Maybe, he replied, but now there's space to grow new ones. During the following week, the consequences spread quickly. By the time we returned to Houston, 3 of my dad's largest clients had withdrawn their contracts. There were also rumors of an internal financial audit. His reputation as a family values businessman suffered when someone, definitely not me, sent a clipped version of the Maldives video and the photo of the empty wedding chairs to a reporter who had once written a feature about his leadership style. At first, my parents called constantly, voicemails filled with apologies mixed with accusations. You blindsided us. You humiliated the family. You ruined your sister's wedding. Eventually, the calls slowed. Then they stopped entirely. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no emotional reunion, just silence. And for the first time, that silence felt peaceful rather than punishing. I focused on therapy, my marriage, and the friendships that had quietly supported me all along. The co-workers who sat in those wedding chairs. Ethan's mom, who called every Sunday simply to talk. Neighbors who brought casseroles when we both had exhausting night shifts. Slowly, I built the kind of community I had wanted my whole life. People who showed up because they cared, not because a camera was watching. Some viewers might say I went too far by sharing family issues publicly. For some families, that may be true. But in mine, public image had always been used as a shield. All I did was stop participating in that illusion. If you're listening to this, and someone has told you you're too sensitive for expecting basic respect, or too dramatic for feeling hurt when people disappoint you, here is what I learned the hard way. Boundaries are not betrayal. You are allowed to say, this is not acceptable, even to the people who raised you. You are allowed to walk away from relatives who only appear when it benefits them. And you are allowed to build a life with people who choose you intentionally. I never received the traditional father of the bride moment I imagined. Instead, I gained something else: the realization that my worth is not decided by a family vote. So now I'm curious. If you had been in my position, would you have played that video or stayed silent to protect their image? And have you ever had to choose yourself over a harmful family pattern? Tell me where you're listening from, and if you're comfortable, share your story. Somewhere out there, someone else needs to hear they're not the only one walking away from an empty row. From my perspective, this story isn't simply about revenge. It's about someone finally refusing to remain the second choice in her own family. Lauren's decision to reveal the truth may appear harsh to some, but it also demonstrates the strength it takes to set boundaries after years of being overlooked. Sometimes the most powerful response is not retaliation. It's choosing yourself and ending a toxic pattern. If you were in her position, would you have done the same at that wedding? And have you ever felt like the forgotten child within your own family?